On the wooden deck of the floating oyster bar in the bay, I was already 2 glasses of Albario in when I waved the check toward my husband, Elias. The sun was bleeding orange across the water, and our friends had pushed their chairs back to watch the sky. I thought it would be hilarious. I said, loud enough for the next table to hear, if your salary matched your ambition, we would not be splitting the grilled clams. The laughter that followed tasted like salt. Elias had been buttering bread. His knife paused midair, a curl of butter suspended. He looked at me the way people look at a dropped glass before it shatters. He set the knife down. You are right, he said, voice flat. I am done paying for your jokes. Then he motioned the server, handed over his card, and signed the receipt without looking at the total. I thought that was the end of the moment. I even rolled my eyes at our friend Mara, who suddenly found her sandals fascinating. Elias stood. I will see you at home, he said, except he did not wait for me to answer. He walked down the dock, shoes in hand, the planks creaking like old bones. I shrugged it off. He had no sense of humor about money. He always got quiet when the subject came up. I told myself he would cool off after a night of television and the new couch pillows I had ordered. I stayed for another drink, told the story twice more, each time louder, each time funnier. When I reached our apartment after midnight, the lights were off. The closet was half empty. His hiking backpack, the one he used for weekend geology surveys, was gone. His toothbrush was missing. The only thing he left on the counter was the receipt from the oyster bar, folded into a tiny square. I laughed out loud. He will be back by Thursday, I said to the dark hallway. The next day I sent a selfie from the rooftop pool captioned missing you, come home. He read it and did not reply. I texted again, this time a row of laughing emojis. Nothing. By the end of the week, I showed up at the carking loft he rented, a repurposed textile mill that smelled of cedar and solder. I carried 2 cups of overpriced coffee like peace offerings. He was soldering a tiny circuit board under a magnifying lamp. He did not look up. I said, can we stop the silent treatment? He set the iron down. I am not treating you. I am done. Because of one stupid joke. Because of 1,000 jokes. You collect them like trophies. I tried to laugh, but it came out dry. Elias, I tease everyone. And I have asked you to stop aiming at me. I set the coffee on his desk. Some sloshed onto a schematic. He wiped it away with the sleeve of his flannel, already turning back to his work. I drove to the farmer's market on Saturday morning, hopping to bump into him. He loved the honey stall. Instead, I found Mara and Devon loading kale into tote bags. Mara looked at me like I was a stranger asking for change. I said, have you seen Elias? Devon answered, he is staying with us until he finds a place. I blinked. He told you what happened. Mara's mouth twisted. He did not have to. Half the waterfront heard you. I felt heat crawl up my neck. It was a joke. Mara said it was a scalpel. I went home and stared at the empty half of the closet. I took the decorative globe off the bookshelf, the one Elias used to spin absently while he talked, and held it like it might warm up. It did not. I left voicemail after voicemail. I sent links to apartments he might like, cheaper ones closer to the mill. I mailed a card with a cartoon otter holding a heart. I thought the gesture was big enough to count. On a Tuesday dusk, I waited outside the mill gate. The sky was lavender. When Elias walked out, he wore a new jacket, dark green, the color he always said he would never buy because it reminded him of high school uniforms. He looked taller. Maybe it was the backpack. I stepped in front of him. I miss you. He stopped. I miss the idea of who I thought you were. I swallowed. I can be better. You have had years. I have had enough. He sidestepped me. I watched his shadow stretch long across the gravel until it disappeared behind the chain-link fence. Next weekend, I drove to Devon and Mara's loft downtown. The windows glowed amber. Through the glass, I saw Elias laughing, his head thrown back, a beer in his hand. I knocked. Mara opened the door. She did not invite me in. I said, can I speak to my husband? She replied, ex-husband-to-be. I laughed, brittle. We are not even separated on paper. Elias appeared behind her. We can fix that tomorrow. I stared at him. You would divorce me over a dinner joke, over a pattern you refused to see. I lifted my chin. I will fight you on every cent. He smiled, calm. Good. I have documented every cent, including the ones you spent on your boutique spinning classes while I paid rent. I felt the ground tilt. You recorded me. I protected myself. He closed the door. The click was soft, final. I went home and opened the spreadsheet he used to track our expenses. Hidden columns glowed red. Every swipe of my card, every brunch receipt, every ride share annotated in his tidy engineer font. I scrolled until the numbers blurred. 3 weeks later, a courier handed me a thick envelope. Inside were divorce papers, a cashier check for half of our savings, and a single sticky note in Elias' handwriting. It read, "No more jokes on my tab." I sat on the balcony that overlooked the river. The sun was rising, and the water looked like liquid metal. I thought about the first time Elias told me he loved me. We had been on a mountain trail, and he had pulled a tiny fossil from his pocket, a perfect spiral shell. Proof of patience, he had said. I had laughed then too, called him a nerd, and pocketed the fossil. I never gave it back. I called my mother. She listened while I cried. Then she said, "You spent years sharpening your tongue on the one heart that carried you." I wanted to argue, but the words turned to ash. I showed up at the courthouse for the final hearing. Elias wore the green jacket. He stood straight, eyes clear. We divided the accounts without argument. When the judge asked if either of us contested, I looked at him. He looked ahead. I whispered no. Outside on the courthouse steps, the wind smelled of exhaust and lilac. Elias offered a small nod, almost polite. I reached for something to say. He was already walking toward the bike rack, unlocking a new bicycle, sleek and black. He pedaled away, rising out of the saddle, disappearing into the traffic like he had been waiting for the light to change his entire life. I went back to the oyster bar alone. The deck was mostly empty. I ordered the grilled clams and a glass of water. The server recognized me, hesitated, then asked if I wanted the usual second fork. I shook my head. When the bill arrived, I paid with the exact change, tip calculated to the dime. The clams tasted like regret and smoke. I chewed slowly, watching gulls dive for scraps. Somewhere out past the breakwater, a boat horn sounded, long and low, like a warning I finally understood.